and the cornucopia, the Quran says you have whatever you want. You go to the store and there's 500 different types of coffee. I mean, it used to be when I was growing up, there was just coffee. You said, that's what you said. I'm not making this up. Some people are too young to remember these days. But people used to just say, can I have a cup of coffee? Because there was just Maxwell House. There was another one, Yerba, or I can't even remember. But Maxwell House, good to the last drop. That's what people drank, Maxwell House, and there was like 3 brands, and it was the same coffee. If you did a test and put blindfold people, they couldn't tell the difference. Now you have, mocha, cappuccino, supreme, ginger, super, X factor, Seriously, I mean, there's a whole list. When you wait in line, it takes an hour to get a coffee now because everybody comes up and they say, I'd like a no foam, extra hot, and 2% milk, right? So everybody is out there, like everything's becoming so specific to the nafs. Like every nafs has his own, it's not just coffee anymore where we all just go and have a cup of coffee. Every nafs has to get exactly what they want. It's really interesting time. One of the signs of the end of time, the Prophet said, تَخْتَرِفُ الْأَهْوَى. People's interests will become diversified. What they like to do. You go to the magazine rack, look at all those. There's people that read those things. There's stuff just on Harley Davidson motorcycles. Because there's people, that's their life. They're Harley Davidson. And they have clothes with Harley Davidson and shoes, and their pen says Harley Davidson. And their glasses say Harley Davidson. I'm not making this up. It's just amazing how all the nafs are turning into these individualized desire machines. So all the desires become individualized. How can people survive that? When I was a kid, you had 4 types of ice cream. Vanilla, strawberry, chocolate, and then tutti frutti. That was it. When you went to the ice cream, what did you want? And if you were really extravagant, you'd have like all 3 on a cone, like I'll have vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry together. And a dash of tutti frutti. I mean, that was like, whoa. That was somebody. But now you go in and there's like 400 types of all kinds of, now they have green tea ice cream. It's just Oreo cookie ice cream. Like everything's there. And so the people, their nafs are just completely being bombarded. Seriously, in Afghanistan, there's just a certain amount of dishes this is the way traditional cultures were. And one of the things the Sahaba were shocked at was when they went to Syria, there were a lot of plates with different types of food. It was like a big shock to them to see that. And they considered it like just extravagance, that food was fuel. Food is basically fuel. It's good, it tastes good, and Allah put blessings in food. But essentially food, if you really ask a physician, what is food for? It's just fuel. It's caloric fuel to give you the ability to do things in the world. And so this obsession with food, and with all the different types of food and different tastes, that's all indications of the nafs is taking charge. And that's where people are at. A lot of people, we represent about 1% of the Earth's population, the people in this room, the way we're living. We're living much, much more extravagantly than kings lived 200 years ago. Really. Kings did not live the way we live. The type houses we live in. I was telling him this villa that we're in, I told Sheikh Abdullah, I said, subhanAllah, this would have been a palace 100 years ago in Saudi Arabia, like a king's palace. And the Hujjaj would look at it and just be in awe, because they were coming from huts. In India not in India, there are palaces too, but, in a lot of the places where Muslims come from, they're simple, poor places. So they would see this and the Indians would say, because they had the Taj Mahal but that's really where things are going. It's just a diversification of nafs. The nafs is just diversifying and more ways of fulfilling its individual desire. It used to be humans had pretty common collective desires. But now it's exactly like the Prophet ﷺ described. The end of time is that every nafs would be in its own specific types of desires. Music, if you look at music traditionally, every culture had a couple of types of music. There were just a couple types of music. You'd have high music, like in India you had a high classical music with the sitars, and they would do it based on the Vedas and all these very sophisticated. And then you had popular music of the common people. Same in Europe, classical music and folk music. Now it's just people, even in one genre of music, there's all these bifurcations and things that people get into and have words and terms, and there's a whole internal vocabulary that only that group speaks. So if you're into grunge, there's a whole vocabulary that goes with that. There's a dress code that goes with it. There's a way of being that goes with it. And that's one group. It didn't used to be like that. People were essentially, there was a homogeneity in culture that enabled us to be together as humans. So if you went to Rawalpindi, or if you went to Kabul or Herat or these places, there was a pretty much unified culture. It had class. There was class, because socioeconomic class determines things. But every class was pretty much harmonized, and there were similarities. They dressed the same. They had the same frames of reference. And so there was a homogeneity that enabled them to feel a esprit de corps, a type of what Ibn Khaldun called the asabiya, the thing that holds things together. And that's one of the reasons why we're so fragmented now as people. We're becoming more and more fragmented. And people are withdrawing into their own autistic type of experience of life. So you have the iPod culture, which is very interesting. People walking around in a completely different reality than you're in, literally, because they're hearing songs or whatever they're hearing. People listen to different things. They might be, I saw a guy, he was walking, I was walking, he was walking, and he was saying, hablo, hablas. He was learning Spanish, on his iPod. So some people do useful things, but a lot of people, they're just bopping along, right? And the iPod commercial to me is really amazing, because it's a shadow with these iPod earplugs. It's like the person's not even there anymore. It's just a shadow of a person. Whoever thought of that ad was just, I think, really brilliant, because they got to the essence of what that signifies. What you're doing is you're allowing somebody to put everything into you. Your thoughts are being dictated by somebody else, because what you're thinking about is what's being plugged into you, whether it's the song or whatever it is. And then there's no silence. People are losing the ability just to be silent, just to sit in silence. This is the human condition in the West particularly, but this is now it's a hegemonic culture. Somebody said to me, do the Muslims really want to take over the world? I said, no, they're reacting to our taking over the world. Right? That's what's going on. It's like this monolithic Western culture, everywhere it's going, it's changing cultures radically, and people are reacting to it. It's so disruptive. And then we kind of look at it like, we're not taking over the world. McDonald's, just because we're in Mecca now, just because everybody's eating McDonald's, wearing jeans, listening to the same type of music, we're not taking over the world. It is. It's a cultural jihad. That's what it is. It's a cultural crusade. Because it's overwhelming all these cultures everywhere. Traditional craftspeople can't compete. The shoes they used to make by hand, you can make it in a day, 1 million of them in some factory in Japan or somewhere. How do you compete with that? I mean, the Saudis used to have these, they called them Najdiya sandals. They don't wear them anymore. Only the real Bedouin type people wear them, because now they wear Birkenstock versions of them that are a lot more comfortable. They are. I have a pair. I used to wear the Najdiya, and then when Birkenstock came out with the same style, and it's all fit to your, and then your foot will, after a while, it's ergonomically designed to be perfect for your nuffs. It used to be just feet were feet. You put it in the shoe, but now it fits your foot. It's amazing. And how do people survive that? Without becoming just monsters, infant monsters. Because we get what we want. And then we get impatient when we don't get what we want. I mean, that's the current human that's why everybody's out there in this state of stress and anxiety, and they're so used to getting what they want now. The computer's not fast enough. People come to Saudi Arabia and I'm used to a DSL line. I'm sitting there waiting and the thing's going like that. In California, you push the button and it's instantaneous. But when we first started using the computer, they were slower than they are here. And it wasn't a problem then because we didn't have that expectation. So once you get the expectation of speed, it's hard to deal with the slowness. And that's what happens to the nafs. The more and more. And Sayyidina Umar said, "Ikhshawshinu, fa inna ni'mata la tadum." Be tough on yourselves because blessings don't last. Ikhshawshinu, fa inna ni'mata la tadum. It's an amazing statement by Sayyidina Umar. In other words, if you're always accustoming yourself to being in comfort, and when you find yourself outside of that comfort zone, suddenly you can't take it. And it becomes very difficult. So basically, the human condition is in crises. I mean, there's no doubt. It's always been in crises to some degree because just being human is a crisis. Just the fact that we're here and living in the world, there's an aspect of it that has that crisis component. And people that work in ERs know that better than most people. There's always something about to happen, or something happening, or something just happened, always. I mean, that's the nature of life on earth.